2024 meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee into order. So Aaron, I'm going to turn it over to you to do roll call.
Yes, Taylor Keegan.
Present.
Reynolds for Brian Lindman. Yanni Alini. I do want to announce, I just got notice Matt Stitchick is no longer with the Anchorage Health Department, so we have an empty seat. I will be meeting with them to figure out replacement, but I just got notice minutes ago. So, Steve Rebuffo. On. Okay, Luke Boland.
Here.
Ben White.
Here.
Kim Carpenter for Brad Coy.
Here.
Melinda Kohlhaas.
Here.
Jamie Acton.
Here.
And Craig Lyon is excused. You have quorum.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. Then would you please also handle the public involvement announcement?
Of course, AMATS committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by staff or consultant. Then the committee is given an opportunity to discuss the business item. Then the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items. If you are joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you are not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. So moving to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Do we have an approval of the agenda? Move to approve. Are there any objections or any changes we want to propose to the agenda? Aaron, do we have any guests?
Nope.
Online. Okay. Are there any objections to adopting the agenda as it stands? Not hearing any. The agenda is approved. So item number 4 on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from 5/2/24, our last meeting. Do we have an approval or a motion to move to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I'll second.
Are there any changes or discussion to the minutes from last meeting? Okay. Any objections to approving the minutes moving forward as they currently state? Hearing any? So the May 2nd, 2024 meeting minutes are approved. Set a record here.
Yes.
Just jinxed it.
Yeah.
Down to action items. Item number 5A on the agenda. The HSIP project nominations. Aaron, are you presenting this?
Yes, I will. Thank you very much. So just a quick run through. On May 20th, 2024, DOT met with the TAC and PC in a joint work session on HSIP projects and the TIP to discuss the descriptions and to help answer any questions that the committees had. At that time, it was also noted that a nomination period is open for HSIP projects. At the time, it was mentioned that the nomination period is closing on July 1st. However, I did get a message, I think that has been extended.
That's true. It's been extended by 3
Sorry,
months.
please state your name for the record.
I apologize. Ryan McCroy, DOT Traffic Safety, HSIP engineer. This year, in particular, that extension has been granted for 3 months.
So with that, we still felt it was good to go ahead and bring this forward so we can at least start the discussion. And if there's a desire to follow up at future meetings before any nominations are submitted to DOT, we can always bring this back at next couple of months or so. So before you is a memo from staff that basically talks about, we have a recently completed AMAT safety plan. In that safety plan, 9 corridors were identified through a priority assessment that can be considered for future funding. And so you have the 9 corridors in front of you. Monk, if you want to go ahead and switch over to the safety plan. Okay, so these are the 9 corridors. You may notice that there is a follow-on, if you want to scroll down to the next page, please. So there are 5 of these outlines that basically show the corridor itself, some collision patterns, collision history, and then some countermeasure options. So the safety plan only had 5 of these done out of the 9 because of limited funding capacity for the consultants. So not all 9 will show up in this regard here. But staff wanted to bring forward all 9 just as an opportunity for the committee members to have discussion about which ones, if any, we would like to nominate for HSIP funding or potential HSIP funding. Can you go ahead and scroll back up to the list? Of the ones here, I will let you know, and Melinda might be able to help correct me on this. The municipality of Anchorage has put in an SS4A, so Safe Street All grant for Goss Street. And then I forget the pieces of other routes, but primarily for Goss Street is going to be the one that's focused on kind of the big ticket item. There is an opportunity to work with DOT and discuss how HSIP can help supplement that. However, that may be beyond the current nomination period, as we still have to wait a little while for the SS4A grants to determine if it was received by the municipality of Anchorage. So Burgaw might be one that we nominate in a future year, not necessarily with FY24, but committees can nominate it if they would like. Staff is recommending of the ones that are on this list here, we nominate DeBar Road from Lake Otis to Boniface Parkway because it is our 2nd highest one of the list. And then we also do Mountain View Drive from Commercial Drive to Burgaw Street. This is the 3rd highest, as well as it's a pretty significant equity area. DeBar Road as well. It's just from my stance as staff, Mountain View area has not received as much attention over the years for its equity impacts. So what is before you is a recommendation from staff to look at these 9 corridors and make a recommendation to the policy committee to nominate 1, 2, all, however many you want, for HSIP nominations for FY24. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
I was going to defer to Ryan to talk a little bit about nominations. Just kind of the process of what he does when he's pulling together an HSIP scoring.
Yeah, sure. So Ryan McCroy, Central Region HSIP engineer. The development process is not one that occurs very quickly. There's a lot of bit of research that is involved. So I just kind of wanted to point that out to the committee that the earlier we get these ideas started, the more timely we'll be in our submittal. When projects are looked at, as we mentioned at the presentation, the work group last time, we do a detailed crash analysis. While some of these corridors may not exhibit some of the crash patterns that match perfectly with a crash reduction factor that we would typically use to nominate ranked projects, we can still advance projects for HSIP nomination that would be unranked. And those that are targeting the safety of vulnerable road users, even though unranked, are more likely to score well for funding because there is a penalty that we must meet annually as a state for the obligation of funds specifically towards vulnerable road users. If anybody has any more detailed questions about the nomination process, I'd be happy to answer those as well.
Thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate you coming, being in attendance today for this discussion.
Thanks for that.
Chair White, so Peabody has particular interest in the DeBar project because we are doing a resurfacing project and we've noted the safety concern at the airport height intersection with DeBar. And so I would like to nominate that one, or at least present that idea to the policy committee. And I'd like to take up staff's advice on also nominating Mountain View. One of the elements that PM&E included in the SS4A grant is some looking at advanced leads and pedestrian signalization on Mountain View. So, but I would also like to have the opportunity to look at it more broadly for the whole, especially with all of the pedestrian activity, providing comfort and safety to pedestrians.
Questions?
No, sorry.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
I guess maybe just more discussion too. In general, when I've seen the HSAP projects get nominated, usually they're not a whole corridor unless we're doing shoulder work. It's intersection improvements, like that sort of thing. I guess just taking advantage of Ryan since he made the trip down here. How would you tackle what Lynn was saying to add HSIP elements to the R?
Yeah, so our rules are somewhat explicit in to say that HSIP should not be funding improvements that would otherwise be included under the scope of a larger project. But with pavement preservation, those scopes are very limited. And so we would look at first the scope of the existing project and what that was looking to accomplish. Look at the recommendation from the committee of whether that be a spot improvement as was being described, or more of a corridor-wide improvement, and then see if we can develop a scope that fits within the program rules and has limited budget such that it doesn't occupy a huge portion of our annual funding. Because at that point, it becomes a little bit more challenging to get a project of substantial size into the program when there are other competing projects looking to be funded in any given year. So corridor projects are certainly on the table, but at the extent that they impact curb lines, that has a lot of rippling effects with the scope in terms of relocation of storm drain systems and whatnot. So we just have to be very explicit in what we are looking to achieve through the scope of the project and balance limited budgets with those needs.
Chair. Sorry, real quick. Question, I was just digging through the safety plan to see if there were planning level estimates associated with those projects. And I didn't see any. So do we have an idea of like the order of magnitude that the funding would be required for those projects? And then so, how much funding is available for HSIP for this program right now? So that we could potentially look at what the priorities are here. I'm a fan of all of them. They have transit supportive development areas in all of them. So thank you for including that factor. But the equity piece is a big deal. And yeah, I was just wondering what the pot of money looked like, what project costs estimated at, and maybe do we get to prioritize from there, or do we just say not fiscally constrained and we just go for everything?
Do we have planning estimates for these, Aaron?
No, we don't. The safety plan basically did these corridor analysis, understanding that we didn't have the ability to do the deep dive, like of everything that's wrong. This was just taking the safety data and saying, what are some of the big issues? What are the notable crash patterns there? What are some possible countermeasures ranging from low cost to high cost? And I think the idea of bringing these forward to the committee is not saying you need to do the whole corridor with HSIP, because there is limited funding and we recognize that. It's more of this corridor section has been identified as an area of concern. When you look at these deeper dives, you can see it's predominantly at the intersections that there seems to be these issues. But that would take more work to be looked at. And I think that's part of what HSIP would do as well, to be like, okay, this particular intersection is like a major area that needs to be addressed. That might be an option for us to address. But then there's also a couple other smaller pieces that can be done along with it that fit within the budget of HSIP. So I know it's maybe not as much information as HSIP wants, but we tried to leave it more open-ended to give more flexibility about project development. So it's not so constrained to be like, you can only do a crossing at this one particular location, if that makes sense. And in terms of amount of HSIP funding per year, I don't.
Ryan McCroy, HSIP engineer. Typically that statewide allocation is around 60 to 70 million dollars. However, that is a statewide pot of money. As we mentioned in the work group, there is no allocation for central region or the AMATS boundary in general. Typically, all these projects compete against each other. However, the larger they are, the more difficult it becomes to fund them. And so just looking back at past precedent, we have developed projects with 20 to 30 million dollar cost estimates, but those would be very large from the HSIP standpoint. Typically, the sweet spot in terms of total capital cost lies between about 10 to 20 million dollars.
Any other questions?
Just want to clarify on the the DeBar project, PM&E is planning on stopping short of the Airport Heights intersection because I think that's the DOT intersection. So that's where we want to have that opportunity for HSIP to give that some more design consideration for safety. So it wouldn't be overlapping. We're going from Lagodas to Airport Heights, just west of that intersection.
Just wanted to ask a clarification question to Orion. So as the projects are getting ranked across the state, does that also mean you're kind of indicating is that low hanging fruit projects easy and don't cost very much kind of get ranked up?
To a certain degree, we have a variety of scoring criteria, one of which is whether or not the project targets actual crash history and the benefit cost as a result of the countermeasure employed. But some of the other elements that you're describing in terms of project ability also get scored, that being that projects without significant right-of-way takes that don't require significant public involvement or have significant environmental impacts do receive a higher score because they're typically just quicker to deliver through the program.
Any other questions from the committee? Do we have any comments from the public? And I would remind the public that they have 3 minutes to speak on the action item. Just behind you, James.
James Dorsick, DOT Planning. Regarding DeBar Road, we recently had kicked around the idea of doing a non-motorized improvements on DeBar Road on the north side between and Airport Heights, and realized that there was a utility conduit or what's the utilidor. Thank you. Underneath the sidewalk on the north side of that road, and it really became an issue for the cost of the project. So something I just wanted to throw out there as you guys are looking for how to segment this. Just be aware that that stretch will be costly, but if if this is how a step to get to overcoming that, that's also something to think about.
As Mark Littlefield, Anchorage Assembly, I just got a quick question. I see the top 9, is that the entire list, or and I think the lady mentioned, I think, low hanging fruit. Is there a list out there that we can get a hold of that shows all of these potential HSIP programs? Projects, or not?
So these are just from the AMAT safety plan, and these are the 9 corridors that were selected based on the data. So this is what the policy committee approved for AMATs to start focusing on regarding safety. In terms of HSIP projects that are already underway, the TIP does have the HSIP table that lists all those projects. And I don't know if that answered your question.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other comments from the public here in the room? Do we have any comments online?
No, that have come up, no.
So what is the will of the committee?
It's a discussion point. So as we're looking at the list of 9 here, it looks like the higher ranking projects there are Mountain View corridor could go along with these projects and probably some good resources having our HSIP folks with PM&E on trying to come up where the best fit would be for a nomination in those 2 higher priority corridors. Does that sound like something where maybe we revise this memo to say, yeah, these are the corridors that we could look at, but specifically maybe the bar Mountain View or near-term nominations?
You wouldn't need to revise the memo. You would just need to have the motion, and then we'll carry that motion forward to the policy committee so they can see what you guys recommend.
Sorry, and the top 2 were drawn Mountain View. Is that what you
Yes.
So we would have to amend the memo. We would just put in our,
Whatever motion you do, we'll take that and put it into the memo so they can see. And we'll adjust the action item to say staff and the TAC are recommending whatever you guys say to be approved by the policy committee.
Real quick, sorry, I was having a sidebar with Melinda. Would it be possible for transit to be involved in that conversation and to see if there's any impacts to bus stops in the area? And potentially, if we have improvements that are also going to be going on around the same time and not having to dig things up multiple times, and that's something that potentially being able to contribute as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I guess to get things started, move to recommend this memo to the policy committee.
Wait,
No.
no. Back it up.
We would need to know if you guys are nominating anything, what you guys want. Because the memo just says for the TAC to at least nominate one thing. So we would need to know, are you nominating one of these corridors or another one or multiple, that kind of stuff.
All right. It was another. What's that?
redo your motion.
There we go. Move to recommend this memo policy committee for the recommendation to evaluate HSIP nomination project opportunities on DeBar Road and Mountain View.
I'll second it. That's what we're, the time.
That was a long pause.
So we got a first and a second. Any discussion?
So the recommendation is for DeBar Road and Mountain View as listed here on the safety plan, or the entire length of DeBar Road and Mountain View.
Well, I guess a lot of the things that we want to have, and just thinking out loud here, we want to have a competitive nomination. It's going to compete on the statewide. So an HSIP nomination that tries to capture the whole corridor. But there may be intersections within there. There may be, lighting options that would be the whole corridor. I could see a number of different options within these 2 corridors once we start digging into some of the branch definitions. Correct me if I'm wrong. I guess we want to leave ourselves open for the most competitive nomination.
Okay, so you want all of DeBar Road to be looked at, not just the section that's limited by the safety plan.
I guess I was thinking within that section.
Okay, that, I just want to make sure it's
Yeah.
clear for the motion that you're saying within the sections that are outlined in the safety plan. It would look at those for further evaluation for maybe targeted HSIP
Yes.
projects. Just want to make sure everyone's clear on what you're,
The limits shown
yes.
in item B and and C, B and C.
And to let the policy committee know, this would be a further refinement by the municipality of Anchorage, the Department of Transportation and Transit, all working together to do that.
Are there any objections to approving the motion?
So you're still also considering the other recommendations, including the first level one, which actually had 13 pedestrian. So that one actually. One's but.
And that was for McGraw.
So we're still considering at least looking at everything on the list. We're
Well,
also saying two.
it did sound like there was a corridor project there in McGraw, the community was working. So I was thinking that the bar and Mountain View, both being number 2 and number 3 priorities would be good opportunities there, but if there's an opportunity for, we could add that to the motion as well. We want to dig into the details there, but I guess for the meeting on how that project's going. And maybe
You know, we just submitted the grant application. I don't know when we'll find if we will be successful in receiving any grant fund. But my understanding is we can always go back next year, after we know more and then catch this one and nominate it for successful, or if we were successful, we would have the clarity and then kind of know exactly what the target measure that we're looking for next year. So I think this one has some activity happening. That was one reason that we're looking at others. That's the idea. Okay.
Any objections to the motion that's on the table? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Aaron, you have enough from us? All right, moving on to action item 5B on the list. This is a review of 3C process document, review in action. And before we get into this, I just want to let everyone know, normally I'm not sharing, but I did have a hand in crafting some of this and was involved in the development of the document. This is a result of our STIP approval process. This is to specifically address finding from our Federal Highways and Federal Transit Administration partners to our STIP approval. And so this is one of those attempts to address a finding in our partially approved STIP. And so before we get into too much of the details, I wanted to just let the committee have the opportunity to ask me to kind of step aside and allow things to happen. I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, and I've asked James to present the document to us as a group, but I'm in an awkward position because I'm chairing, and this is something that I've participated in heavily. So I wanted the committee to vote me off the island. If you, yeah, I'm more than happy to step aside and recuse myself in the conversation, but be here to answer questions. But James can do that. So a little awkward, out of place, but
It's up to how you guys want to handle it. If you want him to recuse himself, he can and step aside during this. We have had that in the past with other things that have come up where the person has physically left the table to go sit in the audience, then they can help answer questions. If that's the case, then he'll have to turn over the gavel to somebody else to chair this portion of the agenda. So it's up to you guys how you want to handle it, and you let us know.
I think informal is fine.
Yeah, I mean.
I think
Gonna present.
stick around and, yeah, we know where you're coming from.
We just want to make sure it's on the record so everybody knows that we were all above board on this. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm gonna do just real brief. Ben introduced this item. I just want to reiterate again, this is to help with the tier 2 corrective action 1A. It's listed up there and on the memo, where DOT must develop and implement process and procedures for the 3C process, which is continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive. These are requirements of the federal process for the federal funding that we have, so it's pretty important that we have this in place. So DOT has met with MPO staff twice, once on May 21st and once on May 29th, to talk through the 3C process document. There's been some back and forth and shifts on the document, but I think we're in a reasonable place now. It's down to 4 pages. Previous version had a few more pages than that, 4 or 5 pages right now. So I think this length is good. But I think, James, would you be able to walk through the document and kind of talk about it in more context for everybody so they know what it is?
Sure.
Well, can you switch over? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, James Starzik, DOT, Central Region Planning. So here in the document is, in bold, is the verbiage from the US DOT with their corrective action, and the underlying bullets and section there go to address specifically what they're asking for here. The real overall purpose of this document is to make it very clear how DOT sees its role and responsibility in coordinating with MPOs, AMATs, FAST, and MVP in these various planning activities. This is all pointed inward. We're not asking for the MPOs to do anything in this document. So that's one thing that is always great about putting in front of you folks. And if you see that, please point it out to us. But we took great pains to make this about what we are all about, what we are going to do, how we see our organization living up to the goals and the guidelines from our federal partners. We bring it here to you guys to give it a look over and go, this does look like an execution of the 3C process. Or you're close, but we'd really like to see a little more emphasis in this regard. Because we can put this together and look at it and say, we think this is a great document. But if it doesn't work for our MPO partners, then we're still missing them. And so this is kind of a validation and an opportunity for comment the MPOs to keep us on target. MPO, do you want me to go through each of these sections? Or?
Yeah, I think it might be beneficial for the committees to have us walk through the sections. And then if they're interested, we can ask for comments or questions per section, just to help with it, because it is a lot. Let's recognize there's a lot here. So let's just start with it and see how it goes.
And a little bit more background. We've had a number of iterations of this document. A few weeks ago, we had a conversation between the directors of all 3 MPOs, DOT staff, and FHWA partners regarding this document, this response. And from that, we came up with a draft document about 4 pages that was then workshopped in a MPO coordination meeting last Monday. Where again, we had our MPO directors, DOT staff, and federal partners involved there. And that's where you see the blue lining here is directly from that workshopping and editing the original document. So we've had a couple of opportunities to coordinate and wordsmith this, work on some of the concepts. So just to kind of give you context of what you're looking at here, the edits you're seeing. So in the corrective action, They do mention the documented procedure should also include DOT's role and responsibility for oversight of MPOs, which you see in the first section here, MPO oversight. Really just a statement of how operating agreements between the MPOs and the member organizations of the MPOs kind of cover this part. And then moving on to certification. There are the MPO TMA certification process and a self-certification process that DOT plays part in. We kind of describe that function here.
Real quick, just clarification for anyone listening, TMA is Transportation Management Area. It's MPOs that are 200,000 or greater. So AMATS is the only TMA in the state of Alaska.
Another section called out in the corrective action was how we work in the air quality conformity process, which is the next section you see here. And we got a little extra from our partners up at FAST regarding non-attainment areas, because that's an unfortunate situation they find themselves in. Then we move on to speaking on how DOT is involved with MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, Transportation Improvement Program, Unified Planning Work Program, the UPWP. And really a lot of focus here is speaking to specific CFRs, because a lot of this is a lot of how these documents are crafted and how each agency integrates into those the work of those documents. It is covered through federal registry. I think the piece here that I found fairly relevant and important to review, though, is the section describing DOT's procedure for tip and amendment approvals. I think is most relevant to our MPOs in this part here. I think what we've come up with does a really nice job of speaking to the coordination piece during this and what the MPOs can expect as DOT helps work the amendments and through the process. Next section is in regards to performance measures, target setting, our DMIO section, data management information,
Data modernization and innovation.
there you are. Really handles the bulk of the performance measures, target setting, and the outreach to MPOs. And so this process here came from discussions with the director of that section. And then finally, or I guess not finally, next, we get into the STIP development process, which I think is very much on our MPO partners' minds, as we just went through a fairly extensive STIP development process and now are engaged in a amendment to that our new STIP. We previously had like Aaron mentioned, a larger document that talked about a whole range of processes that went beyond just coordination, kind of spelled out how we do a lot of things. And in that, we had a section that developed what is our STIP process. And that's these bold, the bold dot and the circles, the bullets here came from that process. that was fleshed out. And then the squared bullets speak towards where the engagement with NPOs occurs within that task. Is that clear? This, I think, also is a very germane portion of this document, and very important to make sure that we get it right as DOT, so that we can assure our MPO partners that they are adequately consulted and coordinated with for these very important statewide programming documents. And then finally, the last section here speaks to general planning activities, LRTPs, long-range transportation plan. And I believe the intent is also kind of speaking to some of our larger statewide planning products and how MPOs will be engaged with these larger planning documents that still affect us in the region and regionally. So that, in a nutshell. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
Thanks, James. Are there any questions or comments, feedback from the committee?
Sure, I have a comment. You know, MOA has expressed for many years our interest in administering some of the pre-construction work on projects, particularly on our own jurisdictional roadways. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity in your next S&O stewardship and oversight agreement to allow local government be more empowered to start to build capacity, understanding the NEPA process, so that there would be ways to efficiently work. So I don't know if that's belongs here under the MPO oversight portion, or where would that fit in? It's just a comment. And if it doesn't belong here, it's still a comment. Just looking for that interest, you know. My second comment is maybe a question on calendar targets. You know, I see some of the kind of durations identified, things happening in a specified duration, but because of things carrying on for so long, in particular this year, and now some projects being delayed, I'm wondering if there's some value in identifying calendar targets and constraining the process. Again, I don't know if it belongs or doesn't, but just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I could speak a little bit to the desire for municipality to take on some of the management of projects. I think that's more of a project development. I defer to James or Ben speaking, whether it belongs to this document or not, but the stewardship and oversight is where that language should, but it's my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I would concur.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Karen?
If you're okay with me participating, I can provide some info. I think one of the things I have a question on, maybe DOT can answer, is what is the kind of timeline on getting responses from the committee back on this? Thank you. On this particular item, you know, do we need to have the committee respond today? Because it's a lot for committee members to go through in kind of a week's time period to understand everything and get comments back. Is there some kind of deadline we should be aware of?
Through the chair, none that I know of. I think the goal that we would probably shoot for is to have any comments from this committee be forwarded to the policy committee and have a formal response, like a group response through the policy committee. So I would guess that anything you can provide today would be forwarded as a recommendation with this memo to the policy committee. And then anytime between now and then, if anybody here, the TAC has additional comments, you'd be having a second opportunity to bring those up in the next policy meeting.
I will say, Aaron, just as a follow-up, we are trying to get STIP amendment out to public comment fairly quickly. And part of getting the STIP approved, fully approved, to get the partial component dealt with is addressing these findings. So we are in a little bit of a tight timeline to get the findings addressed, but also in order to get the STIP amendment out. So I was going to provide an update on STIP amendment later on in the conversation today, but that is the one thing that I think is driving the timeline.
So I guess the follow-up I would have is, will this document be completed before the STIP amendment is put out to ensure that the STIP amendment is following this 3C process?
I believe it's going to be part of the STIP amendment that goes out for public review. So the intent is to get not only NPO comments, but it'll be part of the package that goes out for public comment.
So I guess, would there be additional opportunity for the committees to comment if they don't have anything today?
I believe so.
Just, I guess, a clarifying question. So you're bringing this obviously to AMET's policy and TAC. The comments that FAST, TAC and policy committee, are we going to have an opportunity? It sounds like you guys workshop this with directors and staff, but what about the comments that may be generated from the committees that are reviewing this document? What are our opportunities to coordinate or review each other's comments before? Because if you get something from FAST and it contradicts what we're looking at, how are we going to remedy that?
So we did present this yesterday at FAST Planning's CAC. A lot of the comments that we received were specifying what we mean by when we say NPO. Is this the executive director? Is this the committee? Is it policy? And so that's one thing that we're going to go back and make sure that is clarified in the document. And then one of the other elements that were brought up was STIP amendments, because we talk about STIP development, but we don't cover necessarily amendments and modifications. And so that's another component that we're going to be adding to it. So those were the two comments from FAST. But what we're intending to do is, this is kind of a living document. And as we're getting comments, we're putting it in and we're modifying it as we go based on the comments and feedback. And I think the intent is to try and provide, when we get this ready for public consumption, address as many of the comments as we can and incorporate them. I'm not sure we'll be able to have a second monthly meeting and be able to bring back a revised version of this to the committees with all the comments input.
Yeah. I guess my concern is that if we all come at this with our own lens, right? Like what works for the Anchorage MPO compared to, FAST and the Valley now. So yeah, if those comments are conflicting at all, how are we going to draw straws? Are we going to, how do we remedy that?
I think our intent from the department side is to sit down and review the comments and the feedback that we get from our committees. And then we will probably most likely sit down with the executive directors of the MPOs and the staff to try and resolve anything that may not quite match up, or if there's direct conflict, then we'll sit down with our team and our staff and the staff of the MPOs to try and resolve some of that.
Is that something you're able to do at the staff level without
Up to a
committee?
point. I mean, so I agree. That was part of I have more comments I'll kind of be making here, but one of my comments is, it says MPOs. I am not the
That's
MPO.
possible, yeah, that's exactly like. Yeah.
And so when it says, it, you know, for example, so let me just get into my comments real quick. So I think most of them are pretty okay up to the STIP development cycle. I think all of the other bullets that are in there about the oversight and UPWP and MTP and TIP, those are all based on our operating agreement or CFR. So I think most of them are pretty good. It's just making sure it's denoted in a way that you as the committee know your role during the development of when DOT is going to come coordinate with the MPOs. So that's kind of what we're looking for here is, are you comfortable with what they're saying about, okay, DOT is going to come at this particular point to coordinate with the MPOs? Well, what do they mean? Who at the MPO they're going to coordinate with? Because it's easy to coordinate with me because it's an email, get me in a meeting, no problem. It's a lot harder with the committees because it's public notice, it's get you in a meeting, you know, no offense, but special meetings, emergency meetings don't work. Just period.
Yeah.
They do not work. It's impossible to get everybody in the same room, to get the notice done in time, to get an action taken care of. It's really challenging. So we often have to just follow our regularly set meetings. What does that mean for the time frame of like STIP development? So when you look through this document, my big area of concern and focus is the STIP development itself, because that's what led to these corrective actions. It's the STIP development and not necessarily fully coordinating with the MPOs on it. And so when I read through it, I'm like, well, wait, you know, Alaska Administrative Code says this. We as the MPO do that. Like, how do those work together? And how is it that they come and get coordination from the committees? Because that's what I'm going to be pushing for is you really shouldn't be calling out staff necessarily in here, because we do that anyways, regardless of what's in here. Like I work with James on a coordination level or Ben on a coordination level every day. Today was an exception where I didn't have any phone calls with them. And so I think it really needs to be, how is the MPO committees coordinated with on a regular basis? Because that's what's missing. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure if the STIP development portion is fully fleshed out to be able to accommodate that. Because, you know, Mook, sorry, I know Jamie had a thing, but Mook, can you scroll up to project prioritization and selection? A little more, I think it's on this page. Okay, right there. So this is the second big bullet, project prioritization selection. When a project evaluation board or PEB meeting takes place, MPOs will be given notification at least 14 days prior to the meeting per the code, Alaska Administrative Code. Open Meeting Act requirements that MPOs must operate under require 7 days notice to the public that the policy committee or policy or TAC members will attend. My question about that is still, what does this mean for the MPOs? You guys are notified that a PEB is taking place. And does that mean you participate on the PEB by actually scoring and ranking projects? Does it mean you're just allowed to sit in and listen? Are you able to provide comments? What is the involvement of the MPOs in these processes? I think it needs a little more fleshed out on it without going so in depth and in grain detail that it prohibits flexibility.
Okay, two things.
Sorry.
Like with the development, is there, CFR language that guides that? Is there much that is clear in the sense of?
It's very vague.
Of course.
And it was intentional so that the federal government knew that each state and each MPO was gonna have to develop something that worked best for them. And so because Aaron's mentioned it, we'd have 3 MPOs and they all 3 do things their way.
Yeah.
And so this allows us as a state to have the flexibility to develop process that works for each MPO. And so while the state stays consistent, we're working with 3 different MPOs. So it's a little bit different in each organization. And so this gives us that flexibility. So CFRs are helpful to a point, but then they give us the flexibility to find our own path.
So I guess my second piece is we all do things differently, it sounds like. Are we on different calendars for TIP development? Are we on different calendars for and TPs and UPWPs? And does that need to be identified in this document that says something along those lines?
In my opinion, no. because the basics are kind of already set in CFRs about how long your tip has to be, that it has to be physically constrained, how it's developed, that kind of stuff. I don't think we need to put in here that AMATS is on a 23 through 27 tip cycle, while FAST and MVP, I mean, MVP doesn't even have a tip at this point, so, or an MTP. And our 2050 MTP is gonna be updated to the 2052 MTP with the next cycle. I don't think we need that in here necessarily.
I guess my point or question might be, those documents drive some of these other processes, correct? So is DOT able or prepared to say, at this stage of the process at AMAT, or this stage of the process at FAST, how do we move those things forward and get you guys through your processes at the same time? I mean, maybe I'm asking a really obvious question, but
You're asking good questions.
That's part of the coordination.
I'm like,
Because the big thing to remember about STIP development, you know, and I think what keeps being emphasized by FHWA, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ben and James, but STIP development is really driven by the TIPs, which is driven by the MTPs. And so we develop our MTP, we have our list of projects that we pull from and put into the TIP. That TIP is developed and includes everybody's priorities, MPOs, DOTs, that kind of stuff. And then that's taken and used for STIP development cycle. So I think it's really important that we all know what the coordination piece is. I don't know if we need to get down to the detail of, this is when AMATS is going to update its next MTP. I think it's more of, okay, when AMATS gets to its next MTP update, are there changes that need to be made based on DOT coming to the committees and say, hey, we want to put funding towards these NHPP projects. They're not in your MTP right now. Can you put them in there? And then it works, and then the committees review it and say, yes, we will do an amendment, instead of us doing the reverse, which was they were put into the STIP without telling the MPOs. Then the MPOs had to scramble to amend the MTP and TIP to make it match the STIP. So I think there's been a shift in the process of how things are done. That's kind of innate now. Recognizing things change as time goes on, so.
I know we're not making our record right now, but one more thing, because it's selfishly in transit interests. When we have to do an amendment to the TIP or a modification or the other one's called
Just
staff change, and that impacts the TIP on some level.
Yeah.
We have a lot of money in the TIP under our tables. I mean, they're not necessarily AMAT controlled funds, but that process does slow down our ability to spend our FTA grant money. How does this impact that?
And I think that's our intent, is realizing that a lot of the 3C process was being implemented, but we've never had it documented. And so the intent here is to try and document this, realizing that some process has changed on us. As Aaron pointed out, it used to be we program the STIP and work backwards. And now we're going to start with MTP, TIP, STIP. This is going to be a little bit of a transition period for us, but we want to ensure that funding is not being held up, because it's transit, it's rail, there's a lot of us that are relying on this process to be efficient and effective. And so part of what we're trying to figure out and work through, and that's where we're looking for input, feedback from everyone, is can we come up with a good process where we can identify when we need to touch base, when we need to check in, to ensure that we don't have delays or someone left wondering where their federal funding is at. And so that's part of what we're trying to nail down here, is when do we bring things, we've got a STIP amendment that's in progress right now. So instead of coming in and saying, hey, we just got the STIP amendment approved, now y'all can try and figure out how to program what you need. We've got to figure out a way that we're all working kind of simultaneously through TIP and STIP amendments, so that there's not a hiccup or hold up with our federal funding. James?
James Starks, DOT planning. What you're saying about the actual steps or procedure, and I think you're hearing from Ben is that those will look different from MPO to MPO. What we really want to nail down in this document is showing here's where those things are happening. And as you're also hearing, a lot of things have been changing recently with the way, philosophically, functionally, regulatory, how the MPO, the DOT coordinate with STIP, TIP, UPWs, is also very much new. A lot of new perspectives there. And we want to be responsive to the need to have those concrete steps documented. We also need to move forward, and so I really feel like this document is both a procedure document, and here's where we expect to have that coordination, but in kind of a grander scheme, more of a policy document of, we are going to commit to having this 3C process ingrained in all of these products and all of these processes. This is not the end of this document. I could see very easily where this would become a standing agenda item in the MPO quarterly coordination meetings, where we take a look and we go, have you guys thought of anything else we need to do here? Have you thought of any other ways we should tweak this? I really see this as a very much living document. But the DOT has a responsibility to provide FHWA with a timely response to this corrective action, so that we can get our STIP amendments process moving through the federal process, but also any TIP amendments for the MPOs, because those are also being held up in this quagmire. So while we recognize this is not a perfect document, we also are committed to maintaining its development, work on coordination manuals internally, and keeping the dialogue open with MPO partners, to really to make this something that you can feel confident that we will hold up our end of the bargain and ensure the MPOs are fully engaged in.
So one thing that made me think, when you say, like, let's have an opportunity to keep this open and constantly review or whatnot, a lot of the processes and, policy documents that we at Transit have been working on a lot lately, is we do include language in there that says, like, annually or quarterly, we will review this document, and it's in writing and it's signed off on, and everybody agrees, all right, every October, we're going to take a look at this. Is that something you all would be willing to put into the document? That says, well, we're committed to this review period at these intervals or whatever.
It sounds like a good recommendation to include.
Just like, there's a lot of coordination to go into this document, so.
Yeah, that's a spectacular idea. So Aaron, I know I started at this when I said I was thinking this would be an opportunity to bring all these comments together for it to also committee have an official AMAT's response. But I also find a lot of value in this back and forth that we're having right now. I'm not sure if that's really the direction this needs to go, because I am hearing this, I'm taking these notes down. Curious as to what you think would be the proper way.
The committee members on their feeling regarding this. I mean, we as staff will provide our comments. Because I see errors already even if I'm looking at this. Like, there's one in here under draft STIP preparation. Can you scroll down real quick? Look to draft STIP preparation. Yeah. So that big bullet there that says DOT will collaborate with MPOs to ensure all state-sponsored projects included in the draft STIP are consistent with the MPOs. State-sponsored projects are no longer included in the STIP. So that section needs to kind of be rewritten to be more correct on what is actually happening. Just for everyone who's aware, FHWA has commented to DOT that projects in the MPO areas are no longer individually called out in the STIP like they have in the past. Everything is done via the TIP. So every project has to be in the tip, and then the tip is incorporated in the STIP. So for example, say DOT wants to do a project on the Seward Highway from Diamond to Mountain. That project would no longer be called out in the STIP on its own. The funding would be shown in the ledger saying NHDP within the AMATS area, however the state wants to do it. And then the tip would have to make sure that that project is in there when it's incorporated into the STIP. So I think there's some sections that still need some refinement based on these changes that are happening. And I think we really just needed to get this before the committee members to make sure, does this look okay? Does this look like you all will be coordinated with to the level that you're comfortable with during the STIP development or STIP amendments? And like I said, I do wish we had more time to be able to send it out to you all prior to this meeting, because I know everybody is busy and this is a lot to go through. But we posted it and sent it to you all as soon as it was made available to AMAT staff. So that's my only fear, is we often drop these things on you guys and ask you to comment at the meeting, and it may need more time for refinement or discussion.
Is there time between this meeting and the policy committee meeting to give us a handful of days before stuff needs to be posted to the policy committee agenda that we could make some meaningful comments and edits?
So we do need to post on the 13th, so next Thursday. So we would have between now and next Thursday to get anything. We would have to do it in a way that whatever action you guys did here, it said, whatever edits you have here, recognizing there may be additional edits that are not part of the record that may be added for the policy committee's consideration. That's the only thing.
So how do we make meaningful comments with the timeline and that?
That's kind of the challenge. That's why I'm like, oh man, that's part of the coordination process that is the challenging piece for us all. Because, no offense, we can't sit here and hold up DOT's process forever. Because that impacts us, and it's not fair. They're working hard to get this done. I don't think there's a problem with you guys providing comments after the meeting, and we can bring it to the policy committee and say, there wasn't enough time for the TAC. As soon as we're done here, I'm going to send it to the policy committee members and say, please start reviewing that to get your comments for the meeting. So they at least have 2 weeks to review it, which isn't a whole lot, but, and we can bring your guys' comments and say, there was additional comments after the fact that the TAC members wanted to provide. There just wasn't enough time to get it as part of the official record. They can still consider them, even if they are not part of your guys' motion today.
Through the chair. One of the 3 C's is continuous. And I personally maintain that I will take comment at any time. And as Aaron mentioned, it might not make it into official record, but I greatly appreciate all of the input from all of our MPOs, committees. And you all have my contact information. You can call me, email me, show up my office, carrier pigeon, whatever you'd like, anytime. This document only gets better the more input we get. And that's what I'm working towards, is helping guide this document to a point where we can all be satisfied and confident that it accurately reflects the commitments from the DOT and PM.
So, a couple of comments, if I may. I don't want to hold up the process. If this is something that has to be completed so that the STIP amendment can go through. I'm all anxious to have that happen. But it would be nice if there was a way to fix some edits, especially with that, what you mentioned, Aaron, about, the state-sponsored projects needing to be included into TIP. So that needs to be corrected. So maybe there's just some small corrections. I'll retract my comment on calendar because that's not practical. I think the bigger picture is that we have the timely coordination that's happening so that there's not surprise. And that creates this domino effect of comments and delays. I think if there was a way that Emma Way can have some collaboration and cooperation on the next stewardship and oversight agreement, I would like to see that happen. And again, I don't know if that's something that needs to be expressed in the MPO oversight. And saying no, okay. So, statement made, but not done below. That's okay. So then my final comment is really, Aaron, you mentioned something about the PEB, Project Evaluation Board. I kind of agree that might be cumbersome for what is the ask and what is the opportunity. I mean, we want some transparency, but it's not something where I, as a committee member, am going to be really able to step in and watch all of this prioritization go on. I would like to see it at a broader level. So Aaron, is there anything that you could recommend that you could find as a productive way for us to stay informed versus being embedded?
And
from AMAT's collab, what is your process that you find works without having us follow along with the nitty-gritty detail?
it's hard because I have to be very careful in my communication with the committee members because of the Open Meetings Act. Because it requires if it's a topic that's going to be discussion or action to be taken, or if it's a meeting taking place, like there are a lot of requirements that we have to adhere to. Part of what we can do is work with staff to just bring things to the committee members when they're available, or start looking at targeted times to get that to everybody. And part of what I've done for my review is look at how is staff involved in this particular item. So for the draft STIP preparation, how are MPO staff involved? And so for us, for example, it's, we're going to be working with DOT staff on what projects are in the TIP. And is it incorporated in the STIP already? Do we need to get it to them to get it incorporated in the STIP, et cetera? I'll be honest, a lot of this is kind of new because it is a pretty substantial shift. So I have been having a very challenging time, and James can attest to this. My endless commenting to him is I don't actually have a good understanding of the role I play in these particular items because these are all new. Because the previous role I had was responsive, reactive, instead of proactive. And I think that's what we're trying to move to is more of a proactive approach with the MPOs. So unfortunately, at this point, I don't really have any recommendations other than just asking you all, how do you want to be involved? Do you want to be involved in the nitty gritty, fine details of every email that James and I send each other? Or do you guys need something more broad based that you want staff to bring to you and keep you updated on the item and then provide that opportunity to be like, okay, here is your opportunity to comment. Well, when is that opportunity to comment? Okay, when maybe initial projects are being developed, when the state can come to the MPOs and say, here's what we're looking at. What do you guys think? That might be areas of work. That's why I think giving you guys a little more time to think about it. Okay, this is too in depth, or maybe we're missing something here that needs to be brought before the committees, and we need to note that to be like, when you're doing project prioritization and selection, DOT needs to bring that information to the committee so the committees can review it and provide feedback instead of the committees come to a project evaluation board where they just sit and do nothing. Maybe that's an opportunity we can add that in. So my recommendation is, if you guys can look at it some more, I know vacations are coming up and timelines are happening, but make recommendations to be like, we want to be involved here, we're just not sure. And then that's where I can work with James to come up with some recommendations to provide it to you in a pretty short term. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think zeroing in on this is very important. I think I felt surprised when we had the unveiling of the STIP. Plus, I don't know that much about it, so it was all new to me. But when I asked, like, how are these projects prioritized? I felt like a little bit more reactive versus having a broader sense that there's this process and these categories and these represented, committee members. I think if we had a presentation of what is that prioritization process and assurance that there is a process and there's communication with NPOs, then we know that we have confidence in the process versus saying, hey, 14 days, you're gonna be notified before we're all getting together. That's really not my interest. So if I could just share broadly, you guys could work that bullet point over and come up with a broader rollout so that we have some indication that, it's not happening in closed doors with favoritism of certain areas getting a bigger piece of the pie versus looking at kind of a robust prioritization process. I think for me, I'm comfortable saying that that's my biggest recommendation of the change.
I agree. I think that would be helpful for new committee members as well, because just knowing that all of this may or may not happen in a black box and where it goes to once it, that would be, give me a flow chart, something, outlining.
How does this happen?
Yeah, how does it come to
Dartboard.
be?
No, it wasn't a dartboard.
Yeah, especially if you have no, involvement really in the process.
Any other comments or questions from the committee?
A lot.
Before we open this one up to the public. All right, any questions from the public? Seen any in the room, anything online? So what is the will of the committee on this one?
Make a motion that they make some of the corrections that were identified today and present a different opportunity on the project prioritization and selection with a more broad communication approach. And get it ready and send it to the policy committee. Because I don't think there's a whole lot of time to have another bite at the apple and re-meet on this. I think the timeliness is important to keep. There's a lot more to on.
I mean, if it's okay, I'm not. Probably tomorrow, that is helpful.
And with the additional collected comments that are.
Sorry, from a technical perspective, if part of the motion is collect comments from the committees after the meeting, can they be part of the record or does it have to be after the meeting? Okay. So they can be part of the record if they're provided afterwards, as long as we've all acknowledged that that's, yes. So I guess, yeah.
They have to be ready before you post policy committee.
So, just so you all know what the time frame. Oh, do we need to get a second? Sorry. I just go off sometimes without even paying attention. Just so your guys' information, so we will need to post everything on the 13th of June. So anything that you guys want to send us, we would need by close of business the 12th. That'll give enough time for staff to compile everything and put it, get it ready for the posting on the 13th. Jane.
Okay.
So with the motion made and seconded, do we have any modifications or anything to the motion? Do we have any objections to the motion? Did we wear you out?
Yeah.
Not hearing any. No objections. We'll make sure the motion is approved.
Thank you.
Appreciate everyone's patience and willingness to let me sit here. So,
Yeah.
all right, moving on to item 6. But before we move on to that, Aaron, is there any more action items?
There are no other action items. Good.
All right, moving on to item 6A. Aaron, are you presenting this or handing it?
I am not. I will be handing it over for a quick break to Daniel from Long Range Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members. My name is Daniel McKenna Foster, Long Range Planning. I'm the project manager for the Municipality of Anchorage Long Range Transportation Strategy. Kind of a weird name. I'll go into that in a little bit. So we're just providing a bit of a project update. We're sort of we've done a lot of public outreach on this, and now we wanted to come to you just to let everybody know what we've been talking about, what we've been working on. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this, it was intended by the Assembly to be a long-range transportation plan, but the further we got down that route, that gets really complicated with state language about what a long-range transportation plan is, what old Anchorage comprehensive plan stuff says what a long-range transportation plan is, whether we want to create a new project list, new criteria, all that stuff. So we ended up just calling it a long-range transportation strategy. And it is fundamentally about policy guidance for local decision-making and funding. So this is outside of the AMAT system. Well, it's part of it, but it's sort of outside of those criteria. And it's really looking at what are the local priorities and local values for funding in Muni, probably stuff that comes out of the CIP, maybe stuff that comes out of any other grant sort of activities. So that if the Muni says we want to do this project, they have policy support to do it if they want to apply for funds, not necessarily federal funds. So you'll see that the policies and values here might be a little bit different from what's showed up in the MTP. Now, that doesn't mean the MTP doesn't still represent the public, of course, and this isn't more representative, more or less. This was attempting to cover the whole bowl, the whole municipality, which, to be honest, has been difficult because as we've gone through the project, we found that Eagle River, the Bowl, and Girdwood actually do have very different transportation priorities, right? And the land use is very different. All three of those places have 3 different land use codes, basically. So the sort of scope was to look at all 3 of those areas, but in practice, we found that's been really difficult, and it's hard to find an overarching sort of vision maybe for all those 3 areas because they're 3 kind of fundamentally different areas. Next slide, please. So far, we've had 5 working group meetings. We had a working group of, I think, around 12 people. We tried to get a bunch of different groups. In that, we were trying to tease out what people found that their sort of constituencies' feelings were about transportation. We went into one-on-one working group members. So we talked with each member and say, well, from your perspective, like ARP, for example, we said, what do you think your members need? What are the problems you see? And out of each of those, we got a couple of things that seem to be the main issues or things that people would like to see differently in the transportation system. Then we went out to an online survey of 180 people. Not that much, but for an online survey, it's pretty good. And that was sort of people ranking what we heard from those stakeholder interviews. And then that kind of got put together and weighted. And then we had an open house at the library, went to the transportation fair, went to ski bike to work day, presented the FCC. This was our next step, come to you all and hear what your thoughts are. And this doesn't have to be the only time. We'd love to hear more. And next, we'll sort of finalize it and then go to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then go to the Assembly. Next slide, please. So really, I think one of the reasons the Assembly sort of charged us with this task is that if you go back 20 years, all of our land use plans are talking about transportation, right? Transportation is really a question, I've said it and I'll say it over and over, values and priorities. And these things do pop up in all of these plans. So in 2020, people saying design roadways to accommodate pedestrians, bicycles, transit, cars, sort of a lot of this stuff. Provide more choice, make things safer, consider different types of users. So these are just excerpts from Anchorage Pedestrian Plan 2007, the 2035 MTP, Mountain View Targeted Neighborhood Plan, East Anchorage District Plan. Again, a lot of neighborhoods too have said, we really want our neighborhood to look different or operate a bit differently, or we want to be able to get around a bit differently. And the Our Downtown Plan, especially, there's another project we're working on to really look at all of those streets and really rethink how people move around downtown or get to downtown or get through downtown. And then the 2050 MTP does have some of that language as well. Next, please. So I'm sorry it's so small. This is all on the website, but these are just sort of the results of the main questions we asked. And so we said, we asked people, here's the sort of goal area. What do you think of these ways to implement that? And people voted and it's weighted. And I'll put this in the chat. So you can go and look, and you can see all our data. You can enlarge these pictures. You can also see just the export from SurveyMonkey. And people left a lot of other comments. So overall, out of this, here we had 6 sort of priority. We sort of ended up with 4, which the main sort of goals that people had. 1, maintain existing transportation infrastructure, kind of fix what we have and use that. 2, provide transportation choices and how people move around the municipality. 3, reflect public priorities in transportation investments and decision-making. And 4, consider environmental sustainability. So that one's interesting. It used to say prioritize environmental sustainability. Some people we heard from that wasn't a priority. So, you know, throughout, we've been tweaking the language as we hear from people and say, okay, this doesn't really seem to be the priority. But next slide, please. So I'll just quickly go through those 4 things and some of the main strategy we came up with, or we heard. Maintain existing transportation infrastructure. People talked about prioritize operational maintenance first for people walking, rolling, or biking. Again, this is the proposal. That would be a significant departure from a lot of activities in the community right now, right? 2, account for, provide, and make known the full seasonal cycle of road or path facility needs in design, funding, and all transportation projects for the lifespan of those projects. Again, it's also, people say, oh, how much does a project cost? It costs X million. But thinking about what is the lifetime cost of this project? What will it cost to maintain this project? Because, you know, we see a lot of infrastructure, people love it. That great path behind AWO is fantastic, right? But you go there in the winter and it's not maintained. It's really about aligning the realities of what we can afford to maintain long-term and the full costs into all of this. And if you put that into every project, projects will probably weigh differently, at least in the public eye. 3, treat every project as a safety project. This is interesting here what HSIP stuff was talking about, because I'm sure you guys you have your chart. This is what we can do, and people start throwing on all this other stuff they want you to do, right? We've heard that downtown. We're thinking, okay, 4th Ave, they're doing lighting signal upgrades. People say, well, why don't you take away a lane or wait? To the public, they see construction, they say, why aren't you fixing all the problems? Everybody here knows that it's just not that simple, but this is something the public's identified. They want to see that, look, if you're already going in there, can you just put in X, Y, or Z? We all know in terms of funding sources, realities, planning, that doesn't always work, but that's kind of where that came from. Next slide, please. Provide transportation choices and how people move around. Evaluate proposed projects based on a range of travel needs. I think MTP and a lot of the transportation planning is already moving towards this. This is really moving away from homework type of sort of travel prediction. And I know that things have already moved away, but that was something that really came out of ARP because they said for a lot of our members, they don't have the same types of commute patterns. They're not necessarily commuting to a job, but they need different types of ways of getting around. Same with kids, right? Kids is a big population that moves in certain ways. 2, plan and build infrastructure consistent with mode share targets. This is a pretty significant one. This came from the sponsors and they said specifically, we would like you to set a mode share target for Anchorage. And that will then inform the types of infrastructure that we invest in. Again, this is the local stuff. The MTP stuff still applies. The federal rules still apply. But this is sort of planting the flag of local priorities in terms of mode share and long-term infrastructure development. 3, make it easier for people to link different types of transportation for the same trip. You know, say somebody takes the bus, fantastic. But then getting from the bus over here to Elmore, it isn't quite doable, right? That last 200 feet, there's no sidewalk, there's no bike lane, you're in the lane, it's dangerous. Thinking about that sort of comprehensive, if we really want to get people to use transit, let's think about how they use transit for their entire trip. And number 4, connect outlying communities within the MOA. Of course, we're working with Eagle River, with the Bowl and Girdwood. So they are interested in more options to get here. Next slide, please. Reflect public priorities in transportation investments decision-making. Sorry, this is the most verbose one. Engage the public in project planning. This is really tough because the public says, we didn't know about it. We want to know more about it. Again, everybody here knows that we go through these very elaborate processes. It takes many years. You might plan a project and then it doesn't get into construction until a year or 2 years later. But people too, there's a feeling they say, well, why are you doing it that way? Why is this happening now? And we don't have the answer for that. This is just setting up that this is an important thing for people. So it's actively engaging the public in how to give meaningful comment, because a lot of people say, well, I gave comment. And then sometimes many of us have to say, I'm sorry, we can't do that. This is a lighting project. We can't do that thing here. But helping people navigate that so they do feel heard, but it's also like the process doesn't take 10 years to put in a new light, right? Tailor outreach to diverse communities and focus outreach in underserved populations. And that kind of goes with the next one, prioritize transportation funding in low income and minority neighborhoods. This is a big one. We see this a lot in AMATs is thinking about strategic investment in areas that have been traditionally not received much investment. Another conversation which has sort of gone further with this is, there's a lot of, oh, we want to move to maybe more efficient, less carbon intensive forms of transportation. But what if you're in an area like Mountain View where a sidewalk doesn't, or maybe a bike lane does not serve people as well as new driving infrastructure would, right? Really thinking about the user's needs in terms of the whole scope of needs. Because in some areas, if you live in an area and your income is limited, I mean, the research does show that when people get enough money to buy a car, they do, because the car provides the best access. And we should acknowledge that, right? We shouldn't just say, oh, well, everybody should use bikes or everybody should use the bus. It's great, but it's really thinking about, let's make sure we're serving the people that need it the most. Number two, move away from default metrics that prioritize moving vehicles fast or in high volumes over other community priorities. It doesn't mean that's not always the priority, but in some cases that might not be the metric that people want to see. Maybe they want to see more connection to different access points. Maybe they want to see fewer crashes, that sort of thing. Three, implement adopted land use and transportation plans. Kind of on the first or second slide, people have been working on these plans for so long and they're saying, we asked for this in 2014, why hasn't it changed? We put this in the 2020 comprehensive plan, why hasn't it changed? Number four, regularly revisit the assessment and scoring criteria for the MOA capital improvement project list. This is really just making sure that we are adapting to the way things are. Things get on these lists sometimes, any of these project lists, and they can just sort of linger, right? And it's like, well, why is it on there? It scored pretty well a few years ago. And this is really just looking at that and making sure, look, we have a limited amount of funding. Let's make sure that we are targeting that. And if something's on the CIP, give the process a way to remove it if it no longer serves the needs as it really originally intended to. Assess design standards for how roads are built, including the design criteria manual in accordance with community needs on a regular basis. This is a big one. And this is a lot of people saying, well, we want the road to be changed, but why does that have to be changed like that? Chugach Way is an example, right? People say, oh, cool, we want you to fix it. But then when they say, well, these are your possible solutions for fixing it, they say, but that's not what we need. We heard that from Girdwood as well. They say, we don't need the same type of cross section that you do somewhere else. So we're putting that in there as a way, and I know that that's already under consideration, but people looking at what are the fundamental, what are the tools we have available, maybe allowing a wider range of those tools within the cross section book, basically. And then number six, require infrastructure projects to justify how they align with adopted plans, land use plans or neighborhood plans. Good example of this is 2040 plan, talks all about city centers, transit supportive corridors. And so if you have a city center, a town center, which is this concept that that's an area where people can live and walk and sort of work and play, sometimes a transportation investment in that area does not necessarily align with that sort of targeted idea of what that's supposed to be like. So, and I won't name any specific intersections, but that's sort of the thinking there is, why was this particular treatment done here in an area which in our plans was supposed to look like X, Y, or Z? Next slide, please. And the final one, consider environmental sustainability. Again, this is not always everybody's top concern, but for many people it is an extremely important concern. So number one, provide more options for transitions to more energy efficient modes of transportation, such as bicycles, transit, and active transportation. We talked a lot about EVs there, because some people say, oh, EVs are that is a form of sustainability. People in the working group point out, but a lot EVs often have many of the same sort of risks and impacts as combustion vehicles. So number two, reduce negative ecological health impacts from the transportation system itself, things like noise, pollution, maybe the larger impact, stormwater, that sort of thing. And then three, align transportation and infrastructure investments with the municipality's climate action plan. The Muni spent all this effort to create the climate action plan. There's stuff in there about transportation, and this is sort of just backing that up and saying, maybe track the three metrics that were already provided there: miles, bike ped infrastructure added, public transit, EVs in the fleet, etc. Next slide, please. So next steps, finalize the document. Love to hear any comments from anybody. We're trying to put everything out on the website. It's a pretty simple website, but it's all there. Set the date for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Present to the FCC and all the community councils. I really would like to go with most of our projects. I usually go to FCC and then say, if you want me to come to your council, I'd love to come speak about it and just get as much feedback as we can. Then review and approval by the PCC and Assembly for it to be adopted as part of the comprehensive plan, or however the Assembly chooses to adopt it. So it is a document that proposes policy for the Assembly to use. They can change it. People can change it based on feedback and that sort of thing. But that's kind of where we are. Next slide, please. So any questions, I'd be glad to answer. Yes.
So first of all, transit has a really great plan, Transit on the Move, Totem, we lovingly call it. It had an amazing public engagement, year-long plus, ranked by the community. How are documents like that being incorporated into something like this?
It's a great question. We've gone through we've had our contracts would go through all of the documents, and that's sort of leading into how we came up with the stuff that we presented to the public working through the working group. But I'll have to make sure that that document was included.
I'm gonna say, were we a stakeholder? I don't.
Bart was out for many of them, but he's been involved towards the end, and
If you can never get Bart, you can get me.
yeah, that we've had more discussions with transit at the end, but Bart has been involved and make sure with the totem.
I appreciate it. And then my other piece was, I think it was the first measure, where it's like maintain what we've got.
Yeah.
Is that specifically, I mean, obviously this is a municipality plan, but we know we have split ownership of facilities. Is that making recommendations to DOT? Is that community-wide policy? How are we looking at that?
So I would say that is a goal of the plan, and it is there to represent the desires of the public. So any agency could look at that. If somebody, I think, generally something like this would be used to justify a funding decision. But that could also, if it's a shared facility, to go to another partner and say, this is what that plan said. It got a lot of support and it was voted by the assembly. You can choose to follow it or not, but this does represent what people wanted for this area. But this plan doesn't obligate anybody to do anything. It's really just providing the justification for steps to do it. So it's kind of a bland answer.
So this one is like helping for policy decisions, but it's not defining corridors. Yeah, it's different. Okay.
Yeah. And so the assembly sponsors initially said, let's look at doing a project list. Let's look at doing a criteria for a CIP. And we didn't have the scope to do that. We didn't. That's a huge project and just finished the 2050. So yeah, really it is about, I mean, it's a sort of pie in the sky example, but say the Muni won $50 million tomorrow on some grant or something, and they want to do something with that. This would, if somebody said, I want to do this project or this or that, this would be the plan, the document that would justify that, rather than just like, let's spend it over here, let's spend it over there. So that this would say, for this type of money, let's do this type of thing, or this type of thing. Or as long as you spend that money, make sure it aligns with these types of goals, strategies. So yeah, there's no maps.
Yeah.
There's nothing identified.
Okay.
It really is trying to look at all those old plans, hopefully the total plan as well, and just saying, we've been hearing these things in our land use plans for 20 years, maybe 30 years. Let's make sure that we keep that at the forefront, I think. So yeah, no, it's not creating any new corridors or project lists. The sponsors did ask that we leave a section in there and say, in the future, it would be nice to develop criteria project lists. But again, we haven't resolved, and I don't think anybody's resolved how that would interact with the MTP or any other project or any other, because it would be weird, right, to have the MTP, which has a project list, and then this local CIP project list. People would just go crazy. The public would be, what is happening, right? They say, I don't want to do this anymore. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate your, looking at the information because it broadly provides, what does everybody think, from different stakeholders, and, I can look at it from the CIP and like questions about projects that maybe, how can they be removed? So I can take that back to Communities group and our CIP coordinator. Share those thoughts, or this is what people are thinking.
Yeah, and all of everything is on the website, especially it's an in Excel file, everything we got from the survey. And read through the comments. Some people didn't like a lot of this stuff. But we really tried to go with the general, what people were saying, and then going through the working group, trying to figure out, well, does this sound right with what you imagine that the populations you interact with? But all comments are welcome, and if you say, I really don't think this aligns with the realities of this or that. And in some of these, it's going to bring up hard questions, right? People say, we really want this. Okay, are we willing to make the policy decision? Is somebody up high willing to make the policy decision and the funding decision to go through that? Hopefully this will keep those questions in forefront as well.
Just something for us, so everybody is aware. So as part of the federal program, you are required to look at existing things out there, especially for local level. So should this be implemented, it will be part of the consideration for future MTP updates. We talk about how does this align with the local requirements that they have or the local policies that they have about transportation. So you'll probably be seeing this more often if it is approved and incorporated in, you'll see it as part of the MTP updates in the future.
What's the timeline for the project?
We're gonna get it done by the end of the year, but this doesn't have a hard date. Because it is just sort of a.
So probably not with the next MTP, because that'd be more just a refreshing of financial and stuff, but if they want to follow on that. So in like 8 years, well, 5 years, tomorrow, basically.
Any other comments from the committee? Any comments from the public?
James Starrs, DOT Planning. I really love this document as kind of a statement of MOA policy. As an organization, not of the municipality, but in the MPO, DOT has also this same kind of viewpoint where we have our way of looking at the infrastructure, the development, its purpose, how it integrates into the greater system, our goals and strategies, our preferences. And as a partner in the MPO, we can express that. But again, we are just one part of this group. And it becomes we have the obligation to express our viewpoints, to make them reasonable, to the group and get the compromise. And I see this very similar vein for the municipal side, that, we have mayor's seat, the 2 assembly seats for the policy committee. So 3/5 of the policy committee will ostensibly be using this as kind of the basis of how they want to drive their decision making through the MPO. So it really does help give some insight as to where we may be seeing those members of the policy committee moving the needle in the future. So I really do think that's a great value here. And like Aaron says, we do have a commitment to integrate local planning, local processes into the greater transportation process. And the number one way that that's done is through the MPO here in our situation here. So when you have the land use plan, when you have local plans, policy plans like this, it's not the DOT. We do look them over, in our projects, but really like projects in the MPOs must be programmed in the TIP through the MTP. So to prevent those from being overlooked, they are expressed through the MPO process. And I see a lot of value in this to give that very local perspective. So congrats.
Any other comments from the public?
That's real quick question, Mark Greenfield. All of the community council taken the summer. If we get input in August and September, will it still be for I see your timelines by the end of the year. So.
Through the chair, Daniel McInfoster again, long range planning. Yeah, so we met, I think with the FCC in February, March. Yeah, and then I guess that's a good consideration. We want to spend maybe the fall getting feedback.
Yeah, this is the first that our people up in very first.
Yeah.
So it would be August, September.
And so maybe that should be a consideration. Go to FCC in August.
Okay.
We'll come and meet with you. Aim for planning and zoning.
This. Thank you.
Any public comments online?
None that have shown up.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 7 on the agenda. This is the committee comments. Does the committee have any comments to add to the discussion today? There aren't any from the committee. I was intending to give an update on the STIP. Aaron. DCQ is still online.
Yes.
So if allowed, I would allow Deputy Commissioner Catherine Keith to provide STIP update to everyone on the committee.
She's not a committee member, so technically,
But I can try to get through it. Call a lifeline, or we can hold till public.
it could be a public comment.
Anything from the committee? Move on to item number 8 then, public comments. So are there any comments from the public?
Yes, we have a raised hand from Catherine Keith. Go ahead, Catherine.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I can keep the STIP update at 3 minutes, I promise. So thank you for the opportunity. As you all know, the department has been working somewhat frantically to get our upcoming amendment number 1 released for public comment. And so wanted to mention just some of our milestones along the way so that you all have the opportunity to be engaged where possible along the way. I did want to say thanks for the dialogue on that 3C document. Both James Starzak, Ben White, and others have put a lot of time on the department side and working with the executive directors on these materials. And, this is really just a starting point for us. What we've been looking at is that response to federal highways and FTA on our federal planning findings. But that being said, we are also simultaneously working on a much more comprehensive document. And so being able to iteratively review these things with the technical committees across all the MPOs will have great value as we improve upon these 3C processes moving forward. So that's why, right now we understand that we are up against a deadline. We've been working to get this amendment 1 out for public comment. At least by the 15th of this month. We had originally targeted the 1st, but there has been a substantial amount of work to make sure that we're addressing everything that was part of the recommendations from our last partially approved STIP. So with that being said, what we have done are work with the MPOs to get the AMATS TIP Amendment 2 included, the FAST MPO admin mod, and the MVP program of projects, and we have updated materials from the railroad that have been added. And we're also working with staff right now to rebalance all of our fund sources for fiscal constraints so that we can look at, what's possible to complete out of our national highway system list of projects. So those are things that through the policy chair here of AMATS and other avenues will work to identify what's possible to submit for this upcoming amendment. And I'll finish by saying, we do acknowledge that once again, we're trying to get out an amendment in a timely manner because of our end of the fiscal year target in order to meet our August redistribution limits. We need to obligate up to 590 million in order to be eligible for an additional potentially 100 million in authority, which benefits transportation statewide. So as we move into a cadence of these quarterly amendments and at least a new STIP every 2 years, we have confidence that we'll be able to get into a cadence that allows for this very consistent and planned coordination back and forth. So it may not be perfect right now, but we have, and I'll continually commit to improving that. So thanks for your time. And with any questions, I think you know how to get a hold of us.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah.
Any other public comments?
I do have one. Since he is here in the room, I can call him out. John Cecil, this is his last TAC meeting with AMATS. John Cecil is set to retire at the end of June. And so I just wanted to acknowledge John. John's done a lot of work with the FAC, the Freight Advisory Committee, and coordinating with the freight community. It's been really appreciated. His continued work on the travel demand modeling, which takes a lot of time and effort. I don't think people really realize how much time and effort that takes. Because it's not just developing it and maintaining it for AMATs, it's making sure it's available to all of our partners who need to use it. Municipality bankers, Department of Transportation, and various projects that are being developed on that regular. His commitment on the household travel survey, both previous versions and this version, trying to help with getting that update going. So we really appreciate that. His continued work on the MTP, the non-motorized plans, the good work he did on the TDM, the travel demand management for the UMED area. And then, of course, his support during COVID-19 pandemic, which he was part of the response team for that during the whole time. So we really appreciate that. I want to thank John for everything. I know I haven't been manager AMATS long, but I do appreciate John's tireless efforts on everything I've ever asked of him. So I really appreciate it. And I know he is ready for retirement. We have a bunch of polls up of where he's going to go. So if you have a recommendation where he should go, let him know. And we wish him all of the best and hope he will stay in contact and send us pictures as he's doing his adventures throughout the world. So thank you, John. I really appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Any other public comments?
Ryan LaCroix, traffic safety, DOT. I appreciate the committee taking up the discussion on HSIP projects, having time to think about the process moving forward. Perhaps I'd just like to get a little clarification if that's possible. We intend to use the recommendation developed here today to do more planning level analysis of the corridors that were included on that recommendation. Perhaps there is a way we can close the loop when we start looking more specifically at scopes in those areas. We have in our section proposed DeBar Road to be included in a project for a road safety audit that would begin sometime this year. We would expect some recommendations to come out of that process. That would likely follow our HSIP nominations that are due this year, but could be taken up next year. Something to consider, as well as we get to the refinement point, should it be brought back to this committee in any way about more specifics in what we're seeing in terms of crash patterns and proposed countermeasures, or are we taking the recommendation today and moving towards nomination based on what's determined in the planning processes?
I think going back to the recommendation, we were gonna sit down and spend a little more time. Gonna be evaluating things and trying to get more targeted proposal on those routes.
It kind of raises a good question too. I know, historically, we haven't had a whole lot of detailed discussions on the HSIP program within AMATS. I know we're changing that. And so the result of the action item that we voted on today, whether that's coming back for confirmation when we find whatever nomination we believe would be the best. I don't know. Is that going to be a requirement? Be a question that I have too. It's going to show up as we look at future tip updates. It's going to be listed in there as a. That would be after the nominations and scoring and advancing as a project if it's scored high enough.
I was under the impression that we would bring anything that was developed out of that refinement back to the committees, just to be like, here's all the work that was done. Does this look good? Or does this kind of meet your guys' vision? Or is there more that we need to do as well as just keep everybody informed? Because if it is gonna have to come back as a project to be added to the tip, the more information that the committee, we give to the committees historically has been very helpful. So, AMAT staff can work with DOT to, once that point is reached, get it on the agendas to bring it back to the committee members as an informational item or an action item, whatever you guys want, just so you can be like, okay, here's what actually was developed out of the nominations.
I guess one thought on that, just in terms of timelines, 3 months left in the nomination, if I've got the extension here. A little bit more time to do that, but going through DAC and policy does take up a lot of time, so I think in future years, trying to back this process up, so we have a little more time for discussion on nominations and confirmation. Everybody's best interest. That answers the question.
Yes.
Helps on.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Not hearing any. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Thank you.
Any objection?